I want to talk about the free speech crusade of Elon Musk. So Elon Musk got to become Twitter CEO in large part based off of a mandate that he believed he had been given by the people to take over Twitter and make it a free speech platform. That Twitter was censoring too many conservatives, was censoring too many bad political takes and takes on the internet, and he was going to open it up and make it into the public forum of the internet. And if you have an offensive take, that's okay. You can say it on Twitter. Well, and then there was standards applied. For example, you cannot deny any historical tragedies. So maybe those takes aren't allowed on Twitter, and there's other regulations. But after those rollbacks of his original statements, then, you know, he wasn't going to go any further. Now that he's banned denying the Holocaust, and he's banned denying the Armenian genocide and denying, you know, certain war crimes, that's as far as he's going to go. But then we started to see what was essentially Twitter censoring the platform on the requests and legal filings put forward by foreign governments, including the Turkish government and the Indian government. And we're going to go into the details about this in a second. But let's go into the most recent wave of this that's got it back in the news again, and that is the elections in Turkey. For those of you who don't know, there was just an election in Turkey between Kılıçdaroğlu, I never know how to pronounce his name correctly, very sorry, who is a Turkish civil servant who's ran against Erdogan many, many times, but this time he has a more unified opposition, and he was able to kind of like beat out other more popular candidates to run again against Erdogan. And this time it seemed like he had a decent chance of removing him from the presidency based upon a mandate of, you know, restoring power to parliament and taking a lot of the executive authority away from the presidency, which Erdogan has done during his time in office. And the Turkish earthquake further damaged the image of Erdogan, who came into power in large part due to the political fallout of another natural disaster that happened in Turkey in the late 1990s, early 2000s. So that election was coming up, and there was polling data showing that Erdogan's opponent was polling better than him. And in the lead up to the election, certain posts by Erdogan's opposition were then removed by Twitter based upon them being very naughty ideas. Let's read the article. Let's get the bare bones of the story. Twitter under fire for restricting content before Turkish presidential election. Now, Twitter is drawing heat for restricting access to some content in Turkey ahead of the country's presidential election on Sunday, which is headed for a runoff on May 28th after a first round of voting failed to decide the race. Twitter's Global Government Affairs Department addressed the controversy in a tweet Tuesday, saying that it had been in negotiations with the Turkish government, which last week threatened to shut down the social media platform down unless it complied in full with existing court orders. We received what we believe to be a final threat to throttle the service, and after several such warnings, and so in order to keep Twitter available over the election weekend, took action on 4 accounts and 409 tweets identified by court order, the tweet read. In order to keep the service available in Turkey, Twitter censored content from 4 different accounts. The social media company added that it will continue to object in court, but that no further legal action was possible before the start of voting. Twitter's Global Affairs Department had indicated on Saturday that it restricted access to some content in Turkey in response to legal process and to ensure Twitter remains available to the people of Turkey. Critics say the move amounts to Twitter capitulating to pressure from the government of incumbent President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who failed to secure a majority of votes, but said he believes he can still win the race in a runoff election. Turkish daily Turkish Minute reported. Twitter's account, belonging to Mohammed Yaktut, a Kurdish businessman who has criticized Erdogan's regime, and Sefery Gurvin, an investigative journalist who was restricted one day before the election, sparking concern the move could have an effect on the election's outcome. A third account, belonging to an anonymous self-described activist, social media influencer, and freedom fighter, was also blocked in Turkey. Guvin has investigated allegations of corruption against Erdogan. It's a disgrace to democracy and freedom of expression that Twitter has caved to Erdogan. Guvin told Turkish 60 Minutes. Okay, you get the general idea. So this obviously caused a lot of backlash. A lot of people started to call Elon Musk a hypocrite, saying that this is somebody who did all this quote unquote reporting with Matt Taibbi to expose the Twitter files and show how Twitter was working with the government to censor critics. And then it was found that it was really that the Biden campaign, while on the campaign trail, made certain requests for posts that should be removed. The majority of posts that were requested to be removed were not removed. Some of them that were removed were pictures of Hunter Biden's cock. And it seemed to be a lot more nuanced than Matt Taibbi was originally letting on. Matt Taibbi recently also embarrassed himself on Mehdi Hassan's program, trying to explain many of the inaccuracies which was in his original report, as well as explain the fact that he did not report on possible communications between Twitter and the Trump administration and Trump during the same period of time while Trump was in office about content they wanted to restrict. So putting all that to the side, the idea was that Twitter very much was against government censorship. And now we see this new Twitter that Elon Musk is putting forward that is against government censorship, censoring on behalf of an authoritarian government. What was Elon Musk's defense for this? Here it is. This is Matthew Yglesias, I never know how to pronounce his name correctly, putting forward to Elon after the Twitter, Twitter global government account posted that they were restricting these posts. He tweets out, the Turkish government asked Twitter to censor its opponents right before an election, and Elon Musk complied. Should generate some interesting Twitter files reporting. Wow, this is interesting. Will we get to see the backlog communications between Musk and his legal teams about whether or not they should remove this? Will we get to see the innards of the type of decision-making process that went on when it comes to letting these types of posts getting removed? Probably not. But Elon Musk responds, did your brain fall out of your head? The choice is having Twitter throttled in its entirety or limit access to some tweets. Which one do you want? So Elon Musk's response to the backlash is, look, okay, this sucks. Well, he doesn't really say this, but I'm going to be as charitable as possible. This sucks. I hate censorship. Censorship's bad. I believe in the free expression of humanity, yada, yada, yada. But this isn't really a question of whether I want to throttle this or not. It's either I throttle this or I make it so all of our users in Turkey can't access any of the information on Twitter. So it's either remove hundreds of these accounts and throttle them in the country, including critiques of the government, politicians, etc., or make the whole country into a Twitter blackout zone, which means they can't engage in any free speech on our fantastic platform. Now, I would say that if you can't engage in really all the free speech, then is it really free speech? But putting that aside, I don't buy this. I don't buy this argument because this argument doesn't apply to how Twitter has engaged itself when it comes to these foreign governments. And I think there's no better example than Twitter India to bring this up. In this tweet thread I made, I talk about this specifically, how since January of this year, it's been 5 months, Twitter has been engaged in a crackdown campaign on behalf of Modi's government, removing posts and documentaries that are critical of Narendra Modi, including a BBC documentary that was critical of how he handled ethnic violence within the country. They have removed the accounts of investigative journalists. They have removed the accounts of activists in Kashmir, and they have censored accounts of Canadian politicians, like the head of the Canadian NDP party, Jamit Singh, in India, due to comments he has made critical of the Indian government. Now, Erdogan, I got Elon Musk mixed with Erdogan. Both E's and both came into authoritarianism. Elon Musk says, oh, I don't know about that, when he was asked about it in January. He was then asked again about it in March and April, and he once again say, oh, I don't know about that, even though since then, there have been more crackdowns, much of it in a nature that he would probably not want us to know about, which includes how many of these posts that are getting taken down are not, hey, we need you to take this down or you will have Twitter restricted. It is, or banned. It is, hey, could you please take this down? Okay, we'll take this down. No pushback whatsoever. Elon Musk Twitter censorship widens its no. Elon Musk Twitter widens its censorship of Modi's critics. Let's just read a few paragraphs. 2 months after teaming up with the Indian government to censor a BBC documentary on human rights abuses by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Twitter is yet again collaborating with India to impose an extraordinarily broad crackdown on speech. Last week, the Indian government imposed an internet blackout across the northern state of Punjab, home to 30 million people, as it conducted a manhunt for a local Sikh nationalist leader, Ampat Singh. The shutdown paralyzed internet and SMS communications in Punjab, and some Indian users told The Intercept that the shutdown was targeted at mobile devices. While Punjab province detained hundreds of suspected followers of Singh, Twitter accounts from over 100 prominent politicians, activists, and journalists in India and abroad have been blocked in India at the request of the government. On Monday, the account of the BBC News Punjabi was also blocked, the second time in a few months that the Indian government has used Twitter to throttle BBC services in its country. The Twitter account for Bajamit Singh, no relationship to the other politician, a leading progressive Sikh Canadian politician and critic of Modi, was also not viewable inside India. Now, this goes on into specific detail about how Twitter CEO Elon Musk denies even knowing about it. For example, on January 25th, he said, "This is the first I've heard." Again, it's been 5 months since then, and he still has yet to do anything about it. But we learn in this report that a lot of the requests that Twitter is filling in relationship to the government of Narendra Modi in India is not legal filings, where Twitter is faced with the dilemma between removing its website from Indian service or, sticking to its principles, or removing, not sticking to its principles, or removing posts that means it might not stick to its principles. There are instances in here of them just asking them to take down the post, and they just take down the post. Of them asking to remove documentaries, and they remove documentaries, no legal filing required, no dilemma between Elon Musk and him providing the service to Indians, and the immediate throttling of all of Twitter, the immediate removal of all of Twitter. It is just the Twitter India staff fulfilling, under Elon Musk's orders, all of the requests, or a decent portion of the requests, to censor content in India. Before, when there was much more staff in Twitter India, when they didn't gut 90% of their staff, Twitter India, while they fulfilled some requests for censorship, many more of them were legal filings, and the majority of the requests were not being fulfilled beforehand when they had more Twitter India staff that not only fought the requests, but also fought against the legal filings in court against India, and sometimes won in the Indian court system against the Indian government. Now we don't see that same fight in the court system. Now we don't see that same fight against government censorship. Now we largely see Twitter India caving to the requests of Narendra Modi, all while Elon Musk is claiming himself to be the king of free speech, coming out to liberate the people and build the public forum. But it seems to be catered primarily, this message, to an American audience. It isn't catered now to a Turkish audience. It certainly isn't catered towards an Indian audience. And putting aside the fact that a lot of these were not legal filings, and so this goes against the idea that they're only going to do such actions if there's a conflict between serving the population of a country and their government, and they'll only do it when they're forced to. Putting that aside, where was the fight? Where was the fight that Twitter used to engage in India? It was destroyed once they gutted 90% of their staff, and Elon didn't think about the consequences of what gutting 90% of Twitter India staff would have for free speech purposes, and the fact that they're going to need staff to fight against the legal filings. But they don't even need staff to fight against the requests. They're just not fighting against the requests. And here's another element to the story. Think about how much noise Elon Musk and Matt Taibbi made over the fact that the Joe Biden campaign made requests for Hunter Biden's cock photos to be removed from the internet, to be removed from Twitter. Think about all the noise that they made when that happened. They made a lot of noise, guys. We would hear about new Twitter files drops all the time. Now, since then, Matt Taibbi has thoroughly embarrassed himself, and he has burnt his bridge with Elon Musk as he's moved over to another platform based upon the fact that, Twitter was having, let's just say, some disagreements about linking out to Substack, which they now consider a competitor of theirs, that they don't want to share the platform with, it seems. There's also just the element of, why was the Twitter files, which now have been shown to be flawed afterwards, given so much attention by the press, by Matt Taibbi, and by Elon in Twitter, but actual government censorship of critics and politicians on behalf of the Turkish government and on behalf of the Indian government has gotten so little attention, in fact, that Elon Musk has gotten away for months with just saying, I don't know, every single time he's asked about the fact that his branch in India is caving to the government and censoring critics. Do you think if in America, Twitter was to censor critics of Joe Biden, they were just to remove people because they were too critical of Joe Biden, and Joe Biden went out and said, please remove him for being too critical of me, please remove these documentaries for being too critical of me? You think if that happened, they would be making more noise? Of course they would, because that's in America, and Elon Musk is extremely America-centric when it comes to his free speech crusade. Only free speech crusade in the United States, not in India, not in Turkey, not in these other people that his virtue signaling doesn't translate to, which he can't play to the fawning adoration of an Indian audience to a Turkish audience, so it doesn't matter as much. That's what it feels like. Obviously, it's impossible for me to exactly know the interests and at play when it comes to these decisions made by Twitter, but how about we see a Twitter Files India edition? Why don't we see a Twitter Files Turkey edition, like Matthew suggested, and then Elon Musk so quickly brushed off as a silly idea, and for recommending it, Matthew had brains falling out of his head. It feels like Elon Musk's free speech crusade is conditional based upon you being an English speaker and based upon you being an American. If you can meet those two standards, then your free speech has been saved. If you haven't, sucks for you. We've cut the staff. It's up to your government now. We're not in your corner. That's what it feels like.